You're late, Yaron Vance said without looking up, his voice clipped and cold as freezing steel. Haven Lockwood stepped into the glass-walled office, clutching a folder to her chest like it was armor. Her cheeks were flushed from running, her ponytail slightly askew, and her shoes squeaked awkwardly on the polished floor. There was a delay on the train. I'm really sorry, Mr. Vance. His gaze finally lifted, and Haven nearly took a step back. Yaron Vance looked like he'd been carved out of marble-sharp cheekbones, chiseled jaw, dark hair combed with precision, and eyes like polished obsidian. The man oozed control, power, money. He didn't respond, just stared at her for a beat too long, then turned his attention back to the sleek laptop in front of him. She waited, unsure if she was dismissed or expected to speak. I brought the revised projections for the Q3 staffing. Leave it on the desk, he said flatly. Her heart thudded in her chest. So this was the legendary Yaron Vance, the youngest self-made millionaire in Manhattan. CEO of Vance Strategic Holdings. Known for being brilliant, ruthless, and completely impossible to impress.
And now,
her boss. She put the folder down gently. I also included some notes on the temp agency performance. You'd mentioned. I didn't ask for notes, he said. She blinked.
Right.
Of course. He finally looked at her again, and this time his eyes narrowed. You're the new executive assistant? The one HR insisted on hiring? Yes, she said, forcing herself to stand a little taller. Haven Lockwood. He didn't offer a handshake. Just stared. You lasted 4 days in legal. Then 3 in acquisitions. Why should I believe you'll last in here? Haven smiled gently. Because I don't quit easily. Yaron leaned back in his chair, tapping a finger against the glass desk. We'll see. Later that afternoon, she organized a schedule, answered his calls, and made it through 2 meetings without fainting. He didn't say anything kind, or anything much at all, but he didn't fire her either. That was something. By the end of her 5th day, Haven had learned that Yaron Vance never smiled, never said thank you, and never allowed personal questions. He ate at his desk, worked late, and operated like a machine. His office was colder than the air-conditioning sleek black furniture. No personal photos, no warmth. But she noticed things, like how he always paused for half a second before signing anything with someone's name on it. Like he never interrupted when someone was talking about something that actually mattered. And how he always took the stairs instead of the elevator, even when they were headed to the 22nd floor. She also noticed how lonely he looked when no one was watching. On a rainy Wednesday, she knocked on his office door with a tray in hand. I didn't ask for food, he said without glancing up. I know, she replied, placing it down anyway. But you didn't eat lunch. Again. He frowned. You're not my mother, Miss Lockwood. No, she said, smiling softly. But I make a mean chicken soup. And I don't think your assistant should let you starve. His eyes lingered on her for a moment. Then he went back to typing. But he ate every spoonful. The turning point came 2 weeks later. He was on a call, voice tight and angry. I don't care if the numbers look good. If the ethics don't match, we don't invest. She knocked once and stepped in, holding out a file. Not now, he said. She hesitated. It's the background report on the firm you're discussing. They've had 3 lawsuits settled quietly. His jaw clenched. He snatched the file, scanned the first page, and ended the call without another word. Then he looked up at her, his expression unreadable. You did this research on your own? I just thought it was odd they didn't disclose everything. So I checked. His stare was intense. You did more in 10 minutes than my entire strategy team did in 2 days. She shrugged. Sometimes you just have to look deeper.
He didn't speak, but something in his posture changed.
From then on, he called her by name. Small things followed. He started asking for her opinion in meetings. He stopped snapping when she corrected a calendar error. He even offered her a seat in the car when they were headed to a site visit, instead of making her take a cab. Still, he kept his distance. She'd catch him watching her sometimes at the corner of meetings, during briefings, but he'd always look away quickly, as if ashamed of being caught. She didn't push. She just kept showing up,
Kept helping.
kept being kind. And slowly, he softened. It all crested one night. They'd stayed late working on a pitch for a new international client. She'd fallen asleep on the couch in his office, papers still in her lap. When she woke up, a cashmere blanket was draped over her. The lights were dimmed, and Yaron Vance was sitting across from her, watching. "Sorry," she murmured, sitting up. "I didn't mean to. I didn't wake you," he said. "You looked peaceful." She blinked at him, surprised by the warmth in his voice. "You should go home," he added. "It's late." "I don't mind staying. I know this pitch matters." "It does." He paused. "But so do you." The words hung in the air. He stood, walking over slowly. "You're not like anyone I've worked with before." She smiled gently. "Is that a compliment or a warning?" "Both," he said, and they both laughed, soft, surprised, and real. Then silence stretched between them. "Why do you work so hard?" she asked quietly. His jaw tightened. "Because no one gave me anything. I built everything from nothing. I don't have room for mistakes. Or weakness." She stood, stepping closer. "Caring isn't weakness." He looked at her, really looked at her. "You believe that?"
I do.
His voice dropped. "You make me want to believe it too." Their eyes locked. But before anything else could happen, he turned away. "You should go." Haven nodded, heart thudding.
Okay.
But as she walked out of the office, she knew something had changed. And so did he. Haven didn't expect him to mention that night again. And for several days he didn't. But something had shifted. Not in words, in the space between them. He no longer avoided her gaze during meetings. He asked about her thoughts before others could speak. And one morning, when she walked into the office soaked from an unexpected downpour, there was a dry towel waiting on her desk chair. No note.
No acknowledgement.
Just the gesture. She didn't ask how he'd known she'd forgotten her umbrella. She didn't need to. That Friday, she was filing expense reports when Yaron stepped out of his office and said, "Clear your evening." She looked up, startled.
Sorry?
He glanced at his watch, then at her. "You don't have plans." She blinked. "How do you know that?" "Because you've worked past 7 every night this week. And because I checked your calendar." "You looked at my calendar?" "I manage your schedule." "It's not a crime," he said. "We're attending a gallery showing. One of our clients is hosting. It'll be useful for you to understand their priorities." She hesitated. "Is this a work thing?" His eyes didn't move from hers. "It's a showing. You're coming. That's all." That night, a sleek black car waited outside her apartment. The driver opened the door with a silent nod, and she stepped in to find Yaron already there, dressed in a tailored midnight blue suit, his tie undone just enough to suggest rebellion in a man otherwise defined by control. "You clean up well," she said before she could stop herself. He arched a brow. "That's usually my line." She laughed, cheeks warming. "I didn't realize this kind of event required formal wear." "It doesn't," he said, glancing at the floor-length navy dress she wore. "But I'm not complaining." The gallery was in Tribeca, all white walls and sharp lighting, filled with people who sipped champagne like it was air and spoke in low, careful tones about brushstrokes and provenance. Haven stayed close to Yaron, listening as he navigated conversations with the kind of ease that only came from long exposure to power. But he never left her side. Not once. At one point, an older man in a linen suit approached, grinning. "Yaron, I didn't expect to see you here tonight." "I'm full of surprises," he said, shaking the man's hand. "And who's this?" Yaron turned to her. "This is Haven Lockwood." She's with me. Her heart skipped. He hadn't said assistant or colleague. Just with me. The man smiled. You've got good taste. Yaron's gaze didn't move from hers.
Yes. I do.
After the man drifted away, she leaned in slightly. Are you always that direct with clients? Only when I mean it. Her breath caught, but before she could respond, a woman in a red pantsuit approached and launched into a discussion about investment portfolios and philanthropic sponsorships. They didn't get another moment alone until they stepped outside. The air was crisp, the city alive around them. He walked beside her, hands in his coat pockets, slower than usual. You handled yourself well in there, he said. I didn't say anything, she replied. You didn't need to. You listened. You knew when not to interrupt. That matters more than people realize. They reached the car, but neither of them climbed in. I didn't know you had an appreciation for art, she said. I don't. But I do have an appreciation for influence. She tilted her head. Is that all you care about? His silence stretched long. Then, no. She waited, but he said nothing else. The next morning, a dozen long-stemmed tulips were waiting on her desk. Bright yellow. No note. She looked through the glass wall into his office. He didn't glance up. But when she passed him his morning report, his fingers brushed hers just barely and lingered longer than necessary. The following week, she found herself in the back seat of his car again, this time headed to a downtown merger presentation. Halfway there, the car jolted as traffic slowed to a crawl. She shifted awkwardly. You ever miss not being in charge of everything? He looked over. What do you mean? I mean, your schedule is always packed, your time isn't your own, and even a traffic jam throws everything off. Do you ever just want to step back? His jaw flexed. I don't have that luxury. You do, she said gently. You just don't take it. He turned his gaze back to the window. When you build something from nothing, you don't step away. You hold on tighter. She studied him for a moment. Is that why you never take vacations? Or let anyone in? His eyes snapped back to hers. You think I don't let people in? I think, she said slowly, that you're careful. And that somewhere along the way, careful turned into closed off. He didn't speak. The car pulled up to the building, and he stepped out without waiting for her. Inside the conference room, he was all business again, sharp, unflinching, focused. But once he sat down, he pulled out a chair for her beside him. 3 days later, he called her into his office, not for a file or a meeting, but because he needed to talk. I need you to come with me this weekend, he said. She raised a brow. Where? Upstate. A private retreat. One of our investors is hosting a closed-door summit. I'm expected to bring someone. And you're bringing me? You're the only person I trust to keep me from saying something I'll regret. She folded her arms. Is that a compliment? It's a request. She agreed. The retreat was held on the grounds of a sprawling estate nestled in the Adirondacks. The air was clean, the trees tall and golden with early autumn. Their accommodations were in the guest wing of the main house, each room the size of a small apartment. As they walked the grounds before dinner, Haven glanced at him. You've been quiet. Too quiet.
Just
Different.
He looked out toward the lake.
My father used to bring me to places like this. Only difference is he was always pretending he belonged. I made sure I never had to pretend. She stopped walking. You don't talk about your family. There's not much to say, he replied. He left when I was 16. My mother did what she could, but she was already sick by then. Her chest ached. I didn't know. You weren't supposed to. She reached for his hand, and this time, he didn't pull away. That night, after dinner, they stood on the balcony outside their rooms. The moonlight was soft, the air cool. You've changed since I met you, she said. So have you.
How?
You're not afraid of me anymore. I never was. He glanced at her. eyes darkened by something deeper than shadows. You should have been. She stepped closer. Why? Because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to let someone in without breaking everything I've built. Her voice was steady. Then maybe it's time to build something new. He exhaled slowly, as if letting go of something he'd held for far too long. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. No games.
No delay, he said.
Just one question. He opened it. Inside was a ring. Platinum. A single diamond, round and clear, catching the moonlight. I don't want a world where you're not beside me. Haven Lockwood, will you marry me?
She stared at him, stunned.
Then she smiled. Yes. And in that moment, the man who'd once been all ice and control wrapped his arms around her like he never wanted to let go. Because he didn't. The engagement wasn't announced. There was no press release, no Instagram photo, no whispered office gossip because no one knew. Haven wore the ring only when she wasn't in the office, slipping it into a velvet pouch each morning before stepping into the elevator that carried her to the top floor of Vance Strategic Holdings. The secrecy wasn't a request, it was a necessity. I can't afford distractions, Yaron had said as they sat in the back of his car, city lights flickering like fireflies through the tinted windows. Not yet. Haven had understood. She always did. But understanding didn't make the silence feel any less isolating. That Monday, she sat across from him in a private conference room as they reviewed a contract with a firm trying to break into renewable energy investments. His voice was steady, his focus sharp, but his left hand normally motionless when not typing or pensively tapping the table kept brushing against hers under the table. A silent tether between them. Page 16, she murmured, flipping the document. They buried a clause about equity dilution. He didn't look surprised. I assumed you'd find it. The meeting ended. The client left, and the room fell into a hush. You haven't worn the ring since we got back, he said, voice low. I do. Just not here. His jaw tightened, but he didn't push. Instead, he stood and walked to the window, staring out at the skyline like it might offer answers. I'm not ashamed of you, he said. I never thought you were. Then why does it feel like we're hiding? She rose, crossing the room slowly. Because we are. You said it yourself. You can't afford distractions. His eyes met hers, darker than the clouds rolling in outside. You're not a distraction, Haven. You're the only thing keeping me from becoming what I used to be. Her heart ached at the confession quiet, buried beneath layers of control and calculation. She reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. Then let me be beside you. Fully. We don't have to shout it from rooftops. But I won't pretend it's nothing when it's everything. He looked at her like he was memorizing her face. That night, she wore the ring to dinner. It was a quiet bistro tucked into a side street in the village, a place she'd found years ago when she was still in college and broke but dreaming. The owner greeted her by name, offered them a table by the window, and didn't blink when Yaron ordered a bottle of wine that cost more than her month's rent. As the waiter left, Haven bit her lip. You don't have to keep proving how successful you are. I'm not, he said. I'm proving that I want to share it with you. She reached across the table, brushing her fingers against his. Then let's stop waiting for the perfect moment. He studied her, then nodded once. Tomorrow. We'll tell the team. It should have been a relief. Instead, the next morning, when she walked into the office and saw a stranger sitting in her chair, that relief evaporated. Can I help you? She asked. The woman, tall and sharp-featured with perfectly pressed slacks and a silk blouse, stood smoothly. You must be Haven.
I'm Clarice Duval.
Yaron brought me in to consult on the pending merger. Haven froze. No one mentioned a consultant. Probably because it happened fast. He called me yesterday evening. Yesterday evening. The same night he'd promised transparency. Before Haven could respond, Yaron appeared, his expression unreadable. "Clarice," he said briskly. "Conference room, A. I'll be there in 5. Clarice nodded and walked past Haven with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Once she was gone, Yaron exhaled. "I should have told you. Why didn't you?" "I wasn't trying to hide anything. She's good at what she does. And I needed someone who knows the inner workings of both companies." "You didn't even ask if I wanted to help with the merger," she said quietly. "You just brought in someone else." His jaw clenched. "This isn't about trust." "It feels like it." He stepped closer. "Haven, don't do this." "I'm not doing anything." "You are." He raked a hand through his hair. "Clarice and I have worked together before. She's efficient. That's all." "Did you date?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. He didn't answer right away. "Yes," he said finally. 2 years ago. Briefly." Her stomach turned. "She means nothing now," he added quickly. "I swear to you." "Then why didn't you tell me she was coming?" His silence stretched too long. She stepped back. "I need some air." He didn't stop her. Outside, the wind whipped through the plaza, sharp and biting. She walked without direction, hands shoved deep into her coat, ring still heavy on her finger. She wasn't angry that he'd dated someone before her. She wasn't even angry that Clarice was here. She was angry that he hadn't told her. That after everything, after late nights and whispered truths and promises made beneath Adirondack stars, he still defaulted to secrecy. By the time she returned, Clarice was in the glass-walled meeting room, standing too close to Yaron, laughing at something he'd said. Yaron's eyes lifted, meeting Haven's across the lobby. He stepped away from Clarice instantly. That night, he showed up at her apartment unannounced. She opened the door, startled. How did you know where I live?" "You filled out an HR form when you started. I own the company, remember?" She frowned. "You looked at my address?" "I needed to see you." He stepped inside without waiting and closed the door behind him. "Haven, I should have told you about Clarice. I should have told you she was consulting. I should have told you everything. You think saying it now makes it better?" "No," he said. "But I'm trying to fix it." She crossed her arms. "You said I kept you from becoming who you used to be. But today, it felt like you were already halfway back." His voice cracked. "I don't know how to do this right. I've never had someone like you. I don't always know what to say." "Then start with the truth. Every time. Even when it's uncomfortable." He stepped closer. "The truth is, I don't want anyone else in the room but you. Not in meetings. Not in decisions. Not in my life." Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them back. "If we're going to build something," she whispered, "it has to be on solid ground. No secrets. No half-truths." He nodded. Then, without another word, he dropped to one knee. Her breath caught. "What are you doing?" "I already asked you to marry me. You already said yes. But I didn't earn it. Not really. So I'm asking again, not to propose, but to promise." He looked up at her, eyes raw and real. "I promise to be better. To be honest. To never make you question your place in my life again." She stared at him, heart pounding. Then she knelt too, so they were eye to eye. "You don't have to promise perfection," she whispered. "Just try." "I will," he said. "Every day." They held each other on the floor of her apartment, the city's noise muffled by walls and windows, the world narrowed down to a single, silent vow. The next morning, Clarice was gone. Transferred to another project. No explanation given. But Haven didn't need one. When she walked into the office, Yaron was already waiting by the elevator. He didn't say anything. He just reached for her hand as the doors closed, lacing his fingers through hers. And this time he didn't let go. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Yaron's penthouse, casting soft amber light across the marble floors and minimalist furnishings. Haven stood barefoot in the kitchen, pouring coffee into two matte black mugs. She wore one of his crisp white shirts, the sleeves rolled up haphazardly, a silent testament to how quickly their world had changed. Yaron walked in, still adjusting the cuff of his dress shirt, pausing when he saw her. His expression softened, something that had become more frequent in the past week since he'd finally opened the door to something real between them. "You're using the French press," he said. "You said you liked it better than the machine." "I didn't think you remembered." Haven handed him the mug. "I remember everything." He took it, brushing his fingers over hers briefly, but he didn't linger. "We need to be at the firm by 9. The Elliott-son proposal's on the line." "They'll sign," she said, taking a sip from her own mug. "They're just posturing." He glanced at her over the rim of his coffee. "You're getting bolder." "I'm engaged to a millionaire with a habit of taking over boardrooms." Some of it was bound to rub off. He let out a short breath that almost passed for a laugh. "Let's not mention the engagement at the meeting." "Still keeping it quiet?" "For now," he said, his tone even. "I want to make sure everything we've built personally and professionally stays intact." She nodded, but the words settled in her chest like a weight. Not because she doubted him, but because the line between their lives had blurred so completely, she wasn't sure how much longer they could pretend to live in two different worlds. At the office, the day unfolded in a blur of strategy calls, negotiations, and legal reviews. Haven worked beside Yaron without missing a beat, navigating the chaos with the same quiet intensity that had first caught his attention months ago. But when the Elliott-son team finally signed the deal just after 5, she noticed something in Yaron's eyes that hadn't been there before. Relief. Not the kind that came from financial wins, he'd had plenty of those. This was different. This was personal. He caught her watching and tilted his head slightly, wordlessly inviting her into his office. She followed, closing the glass door behind her. "You want to talk about it?" she asked, already knowing he did. He leaned against the edge of his desk. "The Elliott-son deal was the last piece I needed." "For what?" He looked straight at her. "To walk away." She froze. "From what?" "From all of it. The pressure. The pace. The pretending." "You're stepping down?" "I'm delegating. I'm not selling the company, but I'm restructuring. Elevating the partners. Pulling back from day-to-day operations." She stared at him, stunned. "You've built this empire with your bare hands. You live for this." "I used to," he said. "But lately, I've started thinking about what I've been missing while chasing everything I thought I needed." She stepped closer. "And what have you been missing?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into the drawer behind him, pulled out a folder, and handed it to her. Inside were documents, letters of intent, transition plans, equity breakdowns. "You've been planning this," she said, flipping through the pages. "For a while. But I didn't know why until you." Her throat tightened. "Yaron. I've spent my entire life trying to prove I was worth something. That I wasn't going to end up like him." She understood instantly. "Your father." I've never said his name out loud in years. I thought burying the past would make it irrelevant. But it just left me hollow. She touched his hand. "You're not him. I know. Because of you." They stood there, the tension between them no longer built on fear or doubt, but on the weight of everything they were about to step into. That weekend, Yaron kept his promise. They hosted an intimate dinner at his penthouse, the place where so many walls had finally come down. He invited only the senior partners and his closest confidants. Haven helped plan every detail, from the seasonal dishes to the muted jazz in the background. When the meal finished, Yaron stood at the head of the table and cleared his throat. The room fell silent. "I've called this dinner for 2 reasons," he began. "First, to thank each of you for the loyalty and brilliance you've shown through every stage of this company's growth. And second, to tell you that I'm stepping back." There were murmurs, sharp intakes of breath. He held up a hand. "I'm not walking away." But I am handing the reins to the people who've earned them. I'll stay on as chairman, but the day-to-day is no longer mine to micromanage.
Someone asked why.
Another asked what came next. Yaron's answer was simple. Life. That's what comes next. And then he reached for Haven's hand openly, without hesitation, and the rest fell into place. By Monday, the news was public. The press speculated endlessly, but Yaron refused interviews. He didn't need to explain himself to anyone anymore. Instead, he focused on the life he was building. They spent afternoons exploring parts of the city he'd never had time for. Art galleries tucked above bookstores. Cafes with mismatched chairs and live poetry nights. On Tuesdays, they cooked together, a tradition she insisted on keeping no matter how many chefs he tried to hire. One evening, as she stood at the stove stirring risotto, he placed a small velvet box beside her. Her heart skipped. You already proposed. Open it anyway. Inside was a key, simple, silver, engraved with a single letter. H. For the house in Montauk, he said. I bought it last week. I want us to spend summers there.
Weekends.
Or maybe longer. She blinked in surprise. You bought a house? I bought a future. Later that night, they curled up on the couch, a fire flickering in the hearth, the city sprawling beneath them through the glass walls. I used to think love was a distraction, he said quietly. And now I know it's the only thing that ever mattered. She rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. I never wanted to change you, she whispered. You didn't, he said. You just reminded me who I was before the world told me I had to be someone else. Weeks passed, then months. They didn't rush the wedding. There was no need. They had everything they wanted: each other, a future, and a kind of peace neither had known before. On a warm spring day, they walked through the garden of their Montauk home, barefoot on the grass, glasses of wine in hand. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and something wild. Haven stopped, turning to him. Do you ever miss it? The company? The chaos? He smiled, not the cold curve his boardroom once knew, but something genuine. Not for a second. She leaned into him. You really let it go. I didn't let it go, he said. I traded it for something better. She tilted her head. What's better than millions and control over a Manhattan empire? You. And there, beneath the open sky, her laughter echoing in the wind, Yaron Vance, the man who once ruled every room with silence and steel, held the woman who had melted every wall he'd ever built, and knew, for the first time in his life, what it meant to truly have everything. Rain drummed lightly on the glass roof of the conservatory, a gentle rhythm that filled the silence between Haven and Yaron as they stood near the long oak table, the scent of lemon thyme and lavender drifting up from the herb garden just beyond the glass. Outside, the Montauk coastline stretched into a soft gray blur, waves brushing the shore with the calm certainty of something that didn't need to be watched to be trusted. Haven ran her fingers along the edge of a linen napkin, her mind still sifting through the letter she'd received that morning. It sat folded in her coat pocket, heavier than it had any right to be. He watched her from across the room, arms folded loosely, the top button of his shirt undone, the most casual he ever looked, and yet there was tension in the way he held himself, like he sensed the shift in her quiet. You've barely touched your tea, he said. I know. He waited a beat. Is it the foundation board meeting next week? You've been prepping for it like it's a war. She shook her head slowly. It's not that. Then what is it? She turned to face him fully, lifting her chin. I got a letter this morning. From my father. Yaron's expression didn't change, but the air between them tightened. I thought he cut contact years ago.
He did.
After my mother passed. Her voice faltered for the first time in weeks. But apparently, he's been in a VA hospital in upstate New York. He's been sober for almost a year. They say he's trying. That he wants to see me. Yaron walked toward her, careful and deliberate, his footsteps muffled by the smooth stone floor. "Do you want to see him?" "I don't know," she said. "Part of me does. The other part doesn't want to open that door again and risk everything falling apart." He reached for her hand, pulling it gently into his. "You don't owe him anything, Haven. Not after what he put you through." "I know. But maybe I owe myself the chance to decide that face to face." He nodded once. "Then I'll go with you." She blinked. "You don't have to." "I know. But I want to." They made the trip 2 days later. The hospital was modest, tucked between two hills, its weathered brick exterior softened by the surrounding pine trees. When Haven stepped into the lobby, her breath caught at the scent of antiseptic and damp wool, the same mixture she remembered from the nights she'd spent waiting outside emergency rooms when she was 16 and praying for her father to pull through another overdose. Her fingers dug into Yaron's as they walked down the corridor, her heels clicking sharply against the tiles. He didn't say anything, didn't offer reassurances or platitudes. He simply stayed beside her. The man waiting in the room at the end of the hall looked older, smaller than she remembered. His hair had thinned, his skin blotched from years of hard living, but his eyes, those were the same. Bleary but familiar. "Haven," he rasped, sitting up straighter. "You look like your mother." She didn't sit right away. "You wrote to me. I've been wanting to for a while. But I wasn't ready. I still don't know if I am." Yaron stepped back slightly, giving them space without leaving her side. "I didn't think I'd see you again," her father continued. "After the way I left things." "You didn't leave," she said, her voice calm. "You disappeared." He nodded slowly. "I know. I've got no excuses." She looked at him for a long time. "So why now?" "Because I'm trying to fix what I broke. Even if it's just a piece of it." She didn't cry. She didn't forgive him. But when she walked out of that room 40 minutes later, she felt lighter. Not because anything had been resolved, but because she'd faced it. And she no longer needed to carry the weight of his absence like it defined her. In the car, Yaron reached over and laced his fingers through hers. "You are incredible." She leaned her head against the window, watching the trees blur past. "I just didn't want to keep avoiding the past. You didn't just face it. You owned it." She turned to him. "I couldn't have done it without you." He glanced at her, his hand tightening slightly around hers. "You never needed me to, but I'll keep showing up anyway." 3 weeks later, Haven stood on stage at the opening of the Haven Lockwood Foundation's first educational center, a renovated warehouse in Brooklyn transformed into a space for literacy programs, job training, and after-school art classes. Yaron sat in the front row, his expression unreadable as always, but his eyes never left her. When she stepped down afterward, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing. "How does it feel to be the woman who tamed Yaron Vance?" one of them asked. Haven laughed softly. "I didn't tame him. I just reminded him he didn't need to fight everything." Later, they sat in the back of his car, silence stretching comfortably between them. "I've been thinking," he said, watching her through the dim overhead light. "We've planned everything, the house, the charity, even the kitchen renovation. But we haven't talked about the simplest thing." "What's that?" "When?" She turned toward him. "When for what?" "When we get married." She smiled. "Are you finally ready to stop pretending you're not a romantic?" He leaned forward, his lips brushing her temple. "I'm ready to stop pretending I can live without you." They married in the garden of their Montauk home, surrounded by only 20 guests. No press. No grandeur. Just the sound of the wind through the trees and the quiet joy of two people who had already walked through fire together. Haven wore a dress that shimmered like water in sunlight, simple and elegant. Yaron stood beneath the archway of wisteria in a dark gray suit, his hands steady for the first time in a long time. There were no vows prepared. They didn't need them. When it came time to speak, Haven simply said, You saw me before I believed I was worth seeing. You loved me without needing to fix me. That's all I'll ever need. Yaron answered, You brought me home, not to a place, to myself. I'll spend the rest of my life earning the peace you gave me. They kissed as wildflowers danced in the breeze, and the world narrowed down to the soft thud of their hearts beating in tandem. They didn't take a honeymoon. Instead, they boarded a train, not a jet, not a helicopter, and rode upstate to a small town where they rented a cabin for a week. They cooked together, read by the fire, and hiked through trails where no one recognized them. In the evenings, she sat on the porch with her head on his shoulder, and he listened to the quiet, learning to love the stillness that once terrified him. Years passed, but nothing dulled. They didn't live in a constant whirlwind. There were no more dramatic boardroom battles or overnight acquisitions. Instead, there were quiet mornings with shared coffee, foundation meetings filled with purpose, and long walks through the orchard they planted behind their home. On their 5th anniversary, Yaron surprised her with a greenhouse built off their kitchen, filled with citrus trees and herbs and a skylight that opened at dusk. I wanted to give you something that grows, he said. Like we did. She kissed him, slow and sure, surrounded by the scent of lemon and basil. And in that moment, the man who had once ruled a city with precision and steel stood barefoot in a greenhouse, utterly undone by love and exactly where he was meant to be.